This video is going to cover how we converted the data provided by this repository from SQL all the way through to JSON, and we are going to use Python to do that instead of JavaScript, since I can work a little faster in Python, and Python's got some tools that make that a little bit easier for us. So you can note here on the usage for this repo that they are providing MySQL schema and MySQL data source. We're just going to go ahead and click and open data.sql. And what I notice when you look at this, all of these value statements, that's valid Python syntax. So that's a valid Python tuple. There's an integer and two strings inside of that. And so we're just going to manipulate this file a little bit. I'm going to copy the URL there. And by manipulating this file, we'll turn it into a valid Python file. On Windows, I use Commander for my terminal emulator, and so I've opened Get Bash for Windows essentially here inside my home directory. And so I'm just going to make a new folder, so we'll fire off mkdir, vehicle, data, convert. And so we'll cd into that directory. And then we're going to use curl to download that file where I copied the address. So we'll just curl, paste in the address, and then we use the greater than sign to redirect the output into a new file. And we'll call that vehicles.py. And so that will download that file, write it out as vehicles.py. So we can do an ls. And so now we have this vehicles.python file. Now it's not a valid Python file, but that's okay. We're going to fix that. So we'll open Visual Studio Code. I'll just fire off a new window here. And so we go to the top right, or I'm sorry, top left corner and open the Explorer. And then we hit open folder. I'm just here in my home directory and date modified. There's our vehicle data convert folder. So we will open that folder. And there's vehicles.py present. Now, like I said, this in and of itself is not a valid Python file, but it's very close. So if we just delete this SQL statement at the top, and we'll drop down a line and we can just say vehicle data equals, and then an open square bracket where we're going to create this as a Python list. So this will be a list of tuples. And then we go all the way to the end of the file, and we'll get rid of the semicolon. And then we'll close out the array and hit save. Of course, it's complaining because I don't have my tooling set up. But this is now a valid Python file. We've created an array of tuples, and it's called vehicle data. At that point, we can go back into our console, and I'm going to execute IPython. So again, we're inside that vehicle data convert directory. IPython lets us run some shell commands we can just run inside IPython, so we'll just fire off an ls. We can see that there's vehicles.py. Now I keep mixing up my import syntax, switching between ES6 and Python. So I have to think about this, write it the right way. In Python, so it's from vehicles, if I can spell, .py. Oops, not .py. From vehicles, import star. So that's just going to import everything out of that file. So we named that variable vehicle, and we can just tab vehicle data. And so I'll just throw a len on that just to see. So 7,200 vehicles. So we'll do, let's just import JSON. And now our JSON data will be equal to JSON.dumpString vehicle data. And so now we've turned that our Python array into some JSON data, a string. So let's just look at maybe the first 50 characters of that. So we'll just take a slice of that string, and we can see it's made JSON nested arrays. So we have a year, 1909, Ford Model T, 1926, so on and so forth. So that looks correct. So now I'm just going to write a file. So we'll say with open vehicle data.json, and we want to open this in write mode as file handle. So we are opening that as FH for file handle. Hit enter, it automatically tabs that over. And we want to write to that handle the JSON data. We'll hit enter, and the context manager closes that, and the file's been written. We'll fire off an ls again, and now we can see we have vehicle data.json. So, and actually, about the same size as vehicles.py, so it didn't really change the file size there. So hit Control D just to exit out of there. ls again just to take a look. And so I have a feeling this is going to be, if we look at this file, it's going to be one giant line. So I'm just going to take a look at the very beginning of that file to see what's there. So we'll cat vehicle data.json into cut bytes, and we want to go, I never remember the correct syntax. It's up through, let's say, 100 bytes, -b-100, I think does that. And so we can see Citron. That's interesting. The way it changed that UTF value. I'm curious to see what the raw data looks like. Let's jump back over here. So this Citron, I guess I'm not saying that right, Citron, has a UTF-8 character in it that we have not properly accounted for here. So we're going to jump back into Python. We're going to import, so I'm just hitting the up arrow. We'll import that vehicle data again. Let's look at vehicle data, and let's just look at the first 6 rows of data in there. And so we see that the value is correct here. We just need to figure out how, when we write it out, to include that as a UTF-8 file. And so that is probably going to be in our JSON dump string. We just need to tell it the encoding there. And so if we import JSON and we look at JSON dump string with a question mark, we can see the arguments that it takes, what we can pass in. And so ensure ASCII is set to true. So the first thing we may try here is we'll just try ensure ASCII equals false. So just hitting our up arrow one more time here. JSON data, vehicle data, we'll put a comma, ensure ASCII equals false. And we'll hit enter. And let's look at the first 100 characters of that data again. And so here we see it's okay with that UTF-8 character in there. That looks better. And so we'll go back up to our with statement. And so this is going to just overwrite the file in place. So we'll hit enter. And so that's ran. Just do an ls on there. My clock says 6:05. We can see we just overwrote that at 6:05. So we're going to drop out. I'm going to run my cut command again. And so the terminal doesn't know how to display that character, but that's better than seeing the /u in there. So we'll jump back over to Visual Studio, and then we'll click on this, and it opens the file. So it's still seeing the special character right there. So that character didn't map over, even though it's working okay here. It didn't work there. So somewhere the encoding still not happy there. So in order to make it happy, one more time, back into Python, just hitting our up arrow, just repeating what we've done. We're going to import our file, or import the data from our file. We're going to import JSON. We're going to create the data, and beyond ensuring that it's ASCII, we're going to go ahead and encode this data. And so that will turn it into a byte string. So we will encode that as UTF-8. Hit enter. Once again, let's inspect this. So we'll look at the first 100 characters. And so we see it's switched over. So there's this \x, \xc3, \xab. So that's hex encoded. And we see that these are bytes. There's a little b in front of this string. And so we're good with that. So let's go back to how we are writing this file. So we're still going to open vehicle JSON. The way we want to open it, we're going to open it as a write, and then we're just going to specify that the encoding is UTF-8 to match what we've done. And hit enter. Oh, it must be a string, not bytes. We can fix that. So now we've written that file one more time. We'll hit ls. It's been updated at 6:08. We'll drop out. We will run our cut command. And so now we see the terminal renders that correctly. That looks correct. Let's go back over to Visual Studio. And we can see now in our raw JSON data, we have that correct character there. And so at a quick glance, that looks pretty good. We know that Python would drop in an escape in there with a backslash. We can just look for a backslash in that file. Look for a forward slash. There are a couple listed in the file. They're hard to see, but those are just the name. Datsun Nissan. Certainly not an escape sequence. So at that point, our data's clean. A little bit of trial and error to get that set up. But that's how we arrived, or that's how I arrived at this flat file that we're using.